All right, cool. I think we are good to go. How are you? What's your name? Sorry.
My name is Karim.
Karim.
I live in Dubai. I'm Lebanese originally, but I moved to Dubai like 3, 4 years ago.
Oh, really? I know a few Lebanese people that have done the same. To be fair, seems to be the go-to. So, what's
Yeah.
your trading history? Give me
Um,
a breakdown.
Basically, I've been trading like almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, I've not trade spot trading uh, technically till now. No spot trading. It's only leverage. Basically, I've been using one strategy. Now I've learned a couple of strategies from WWG, but I've been using one strategy, which is the demand supply, mainly on the 4 hour time frame.
Yeah.
Um, Basically, most of the strategy is intraday trading, maybe scalping. I don't look at the higher time frame most of the time. I look on lower time frame and I try to do like quick scalps.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting because off the bat,
Mm.
uh, it feels like there's already confliction because when you're trading supply and demand, it's predominantly a higher time frame system, but we'll get into that. So how do you feel like your trading's been? What are the results over the last 1 to 2 years?
Um, it's been profitable for now, but I'm just trying to trade whenever the market is a bit easy, you know?
So
Sometimes just get hard to me and I just pull off and start watching because I don't know how to trade, to be honest, when it becomes a bit difficult.
so
But like
you're, you're
when you have
hang on.
the
So
easy,
you're saying that you are profitable in your first 1 to 2 years of trading.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, so that's a good start then, because most
yeah.
people aren't. All right.
But I'll try to, always trying to like avoid the difficult times and just try to like ride the wave when it's easy, you know?
Yeah, that's a good skill
And
to have.
that, I guess, that's what's making it profitable till now. But I've
Yeah.
tried to trade like a couple of times when it's like tough, and I always lose money.
I mean, it's good that you can identify the conditions in that way because many people don't have the discipline to step away. What would you say then your biggest flaws are in your trading?
Um, so the biggest problems that I'm facing, maybe it's sometimes I cannot identify the ranges very well. So sometimes I'm just stuck with trading at the higher um, um, range where if I start losing the money or the profits that I've
Okay.
been making. Um,
So,
what
co-
happened the last 2 days? I've continued trading when BTC was at the top of the range, for example, and I was anticipating a breakout, considering the XRP news and everything,
mhm.
which I was caught in losing almost 30 to 40% of the profit made on the last two, three
Yeah.
days.
Okay. So,
Um,
can I just get this clear then? So, when you say that you've been profitable, have you been profitable trading your own trades, or is it from essentially being in a group and then copying the trades?
it's a mix. It's a mix.
Mix. All right. Because
Yeah. So I take basically, I'm just following two traders, which is basically follow your trades and Eli trades.
yeah.
Um, and I take my own setups also.
Okay, that's good. Because it'll be good for you in future to also try and journal this separately because you need to get a clear data alignment with your decisions and other people's decisions, right? Because once
True.
they're mixed in, you're not going to quite understand where you're at because the data is going to have mixed results, right? But
True.
that's all right. And
I've seen your tweet yesterday on that, and I thought I need to start a journal to like record everything that I'm doing
yeah,
to just
yeah,
identify where are my mistakes and where I'm doing well. So,
yeah. That makes sense. All right. So then you've got a collection of trades that you want to go over, right?
not really, to be
No.
honest.
Okay.
But I've got like few questions that I need to ask you.
Sure.
Like, but for example, BTC, we've been basically trading in a very simple range since like 25 days or 28 days now, right?
Yep.
BTC is stuck between 30 and 31, 8,
Yep.
5 zone, right? So I just need to understand if the range. Sometimes I just find it difficult to like understand in which range BTC or other alts
Okay.
are like
No.
trading. So I just need to understand from you what's the best way to identify the range and
Sure.
what is the best time frame to understand the range.
All right. Let me share my screen with you.
Sure.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Cool. I mean, in terms of a ranging environment, you're going to put your first level, just under 30k. Looking at the price action, obviously we've wicked into and below, but for the most part, going into this low down here is our range lows, right?
Yep.
When we look at this cluster here and then generate from that, then we'll go for range high, which for me is like 31.2. Again, we look at the price action. Obviously, we've wicked through and rejected multiple times. Had this breakthrough on the XRP news, couldn't hold the move, and then we just put in basically a bearish retest on the breakdown along here. In before this move down. So in terms of a ranging environment, you've just got to look at what one where the candles are closing and what area is consistently getting rejected or bought back up, right? Obviously, we could probably play off a mid-range level, which is somewhere in the mid 30Ks, but I don't see much value in trying to trade off of that. Obviously, when we look at the scenarios along here, this is the type of price action we actually want to avoid. So if you're range trading, this is where you want to avoid, and then you want to be looking on the fade side of things, so on the highs or the lows every time, right? So these areas here, these type of areas are where you essentially want to try and get in. We haven't had the greatest triggers in my opinion in terms of these. I think the best trigger came probably on this 31.2 retest, although I didn't get in myself. This was actually in hindsight a very good set up to short, because you have to remember all the news that came in with this move as well. Obviously we had the ETFs of recent, and then the XRP news, which essentially caused this candle. Once you have all of that rolled into to the price action, you want to see this sustain the breakout. If it can't sustain the breakout and you have all of that news, then it is obviously a bad sign, and you can expect this kind of price action here where everything just gets slammed back down.
Yep.
If that makes sense. And then
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not like the best type of range to trade for me. Like I prefer a bit of a larger range. This is a 4% range. This isn't the type of range I want to trade. I want to trade something that's like 20-30%. Cause then I'm targeting bigger swings. Whereas this, in such a tight range, provides just a lot of chop, and that's kind of what we've seen throughout this, right?
Yeah. 100%.
And that's
Just a question here. I've seen that basically you've been avoiding shorting even on the top of the range, right? In the
yeah,
last
yeah,
20 days. Is
yeah.
there a reason for that? Is it because of the news and maybe we were supposed to break out or
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I'm avoiding it. It's just the trend of the market. When you look at the scenario for altcoins at the time, obviously they pop now, but I was avoiding shorting before this pop for the simple reason of what happened in this brief time. A lot of the alts look compressed to the downside, and you have to remember that it only takes 1 to 2 days for altcoins to squeeze, for essentially most of your shorts to be invalidated, right? So it's just
yeah,
taking into consideration the conditions and what the market, essentially looks like it's going to squeeze. For me, it looked like, we was pending at least a squeeze on altcoin positions. A lot of them slowed down on the momentum to the downside, and then when I'm shorting, I want quick responses. So you see how quickly these candles get slammed down versus
yeah,
going up. It's always shorting is always a quicker response. A lot of that's to do with, one, liquidations that people often prefer to long, and two, there's a lot more fear induced decisions when market is dumping. People are irrational, they're jumping back into positions, they're panic closing. Like it fuels things to the downside quicker. It's a lot easier to take people out when we're moving price down. So for me, once momentum's not dropping anymore, that's enough for me. I like to be on the side where I'm gonna fade the move and I want a quick response. And I think this 31.2 is actually probably the best example. I just didn't get a good enough trigger personally, but in hindsight, when we started doing this retest here and couldn't get back above, it didn't give me a trigger, but this is the scenario that I'm often looking for on a bearish retest, and then you get that slam down.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, this isn't the best of ranges because it's super confined. I prefer a larger range to play swings off, especially on BTC as well. Like I definitely don't want to trade a 4% range on BTC too much.
All right. Question. I've seen that you always use like very easy invalidation for most of your trades. Even
Yep.
if you're looking like at the swing trade, you just use a very easy invalidation and it
Hmm.
works most of the time.
Yep.
How do you do that? It's like I just find it a bit like difficult for me. I just feel that if I use a easy invalidation, I might be ending up losing the trade, you know.
Yep.
I always feel more comfortable if I have like a wider invalidation where I can DCA a bit and
Yeah. I mean, there's a mixture because I do get in those trades as well. But it's like, okay, let's look at this for example. Today, Inge was a position I caught. It was a 4% move, but let's look at it from a standpoint of structure. We know that there's a level across here, right? We can see,
yeah,
we know that the coin's been bullish. We look at this as a level, and then we have to remember, like the best way to look at this candle is to think about the other side of the trade. Think about this candle, remembering that if you're going to go long here, there's also people that were selling here. Now, when this candle closes like this in the 4 hour,
it's the 4 hour
yeah,
hammer candle, right?
yeah, this is the 4 hour hammer. Again, think about the other side of the trade. Think about now that anyone that was short or was trying to short this breakdown is now trapped. So
Yes.
off the bat, that is a good sign for me to say, let's assess this. If we're actually gonna squeeze them, we need to move up. Like, if we're gonna show a bit of strength, we've now trapped them. We need to move price away from them to make them close their positions or get liquidated, right? So
Yep.
then off the bat, obviously this we have to take into consideration the conditions are choppy, but at least for a TP1 we have now hit. Obviously the overall trade you're looking for more, right? You're looking for a bigger move. Why? Because this could just be a bullish retest before moving higher into the $10 region on a larger time frame. But this, if we're in terms of getting the trigger, where else would we get in if we're looking to capture the rest of that upside? That this is the best scenario. So for me, I'm like, well, okay, I can enter here. My stop's 2.8%. At a minimum, I'm going to target a TP1 of just this cluster here. We know that conditions are choppy, so we're happy to take a little bit out here. And then from here, we're looking to run the highs, and then potentially on the higher time frame, if it does break out, then we get lucky and we capture the bigger move, right, towards these highs at 13. So it's just about putting into a scenario. Is like, if this coin's going to move, and I'm not in from lower, and how do I get in? And it's as simple as that. I'm getting in now because I think positions are trapped here. The PA looks good. We've swept this level here, bullish retest, trap positions. If we're gonna go, ideally it's from here, and we move up, right?
Yep.
And that's simply why I prefer the invalidations, because it tells a story. It's not exactly that I prefer easy invalidations. It just tells me a story based on price action that I want to bet with, right? I'm betting that these people are trapped and the market is going to force them to close their positions or get liquidated or get stopped, right?
Yeah. And it's always good to have like easy invalidation.
Well,
That would
yeah,
be
exactly.
better, right?
And again, just like I said, right, this is a 2.8% position. Um, At worst, we get a 1-to-1, which isn't what I target. I mean, more than 1-to-1. This moved 5%, but
That's already a very good RR till now, right?
yeah. Well, but when we look at it from the higher perspective, if this sustains that move now and doesn't break down, we've now got such an easy invalidation, and we're opening up into such a broader level, right? For me, if this holds the break, this is you target 13, right? You know, look at the
Yeah.
structure. Where else are we going to target across here? Um, you know, I don't see a reason why we would not target $10. Obviously, we'll get the psychological level at 10. The whole number we've seen rejections there in the past, but in terms of a bigger structure, like 13 makes sense. So for me, if I'm looking for swings, I've got like a 2.8% invalidation and a 50% overall target. Obviously, we'll pay ourselves on the way up because you know these aren't the most friendly conditions, but then this has been one of the most strongest coins in the market overall in terms of trend. So we're just trying to get involved in that trend.
That's a mistake I do, by the way. I don't look at the higher time frame. For example, for me, if I was in a similar setup, I'll just look to TP around the first
Yeah, I
resistance on
mean,
a
but
lower time frame.
that isn't wrong either. There's no, you know, your main goal is to be extracting money from the market. What it then
Yeah,
comes down to is assessing your data and seeing, well, how many times did I not play the bigger, setup at hand? How many times did that work out? How many times could I have held my position, um, but I didn't simply because of the P and L? That's where you have to differentiate. Obviously, we take into consideration conditions and stuff as well. So we've had an okay run over the last like those 2 days, but overall the conditions have been very choppy, and just taking your money and going isn't the worst thing. So you
true.
kind
This is
of
why I've been using this strategy. I feel like we're still in a chop mode in a way, right? So
yeah.
I just feel it's better like to always TP, like get the best out of the
Yeah, I
market
mean,
and
at
just be.
least at least if you're gonna do it, like maybe like dependent, like this is a solid invalidation setup. So for me, it's like I could probably just take out like 60%, 65% of my position, let the rest run. If I'm lucky and the setup is as bullish as I think, then I'll let the 30-35% just run, right? And if that does hit, then it's still a great payout, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of the way I see it. But again, you have to look at data and see is there a clear statistic here that I should be holding my trades longer, or is it better that I'm extracting early? That's what you're going to have to look at the type of trades you're taking. You know, most of the time for these setups, it will depend on conditions. Like if we flip bullish. And the market doesn't break down, then I'd be pretty confident that this just runs. But I'm not, overall, I'm not sure if that's the case right now or not. So, you just have to take that in bullish conditions. These type of setups then you hold, these will run. But we've not been in those conditions for some time.
All right.
Um, yeah.
Question. Do you look at like indicators before you start your day trading? Like personally, I only use BTC, ETH, and maybe BTC dominance before I start trading. But I've seen a lot of people using the XY index, SPX, and
Um,
loads of.
Not too much. Like I like to keep my trading as simple as possible. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It like if you understand macro markets, then it can be helpful. But if you don't fully understand them, then you're probably just creating more noise. I think you can use the dollar in terms of like looking at an overall landscape of the market. Like if we're going into key levels across the board on multiple markets, then you might find some confluence there. But for the most part, the chart's going to tell you all you need to know in price action.
All
For
right.
me, I like to keep it as simple as possible. I just trade off like RSI, and then I have my own system indicators and stuff. But for the most part, I like to personally keep it as simple as possible.
So the RSI is the only indicator you use, right?
Yeah, I have my own indicator that works out my system, but basically I only use RSI.
And you use like you just look at it if it is 50 and going above with the price action, right? And
Yeah, it
what's
has
the
to be in
bullish trend?
confluence with price action. Like I don't solely use RSI. I always favor price action first, and then I look
Okay.
for RSI in confluence. So like if we're going into like a heavy support and we've been dumping, and then we start dropping into the 20s, like we look at this here, right? So we've had
Yeah.
an aggressive dump on Inge, for the most part into this. This was a key level. When we look at the bigger picture along here and here, like we know it's a big level. So if we're doing that into the 4 hour, for example, and we get stuck here, we know the 20 is very oversold. So then I'm looking for a reaction across this. So then that can be confluence where I say, hey, I think we're probably oversold here. I'm happy to be a buyer, and then obviously my invalidation would be if we basically invalidate this being a support, a big support. So that's where it can come in handy. And then same, for the upside, if we're completely overextended here, look, we hit the 80, obviously big move through resistance, cooled off, and now we're just hovering, trying to turn it into a support. Gone now into the 50, which is the confluence here to say,
It
we're
looks bullish, right?
yeah, like it's one of the most bullish charts in the market. We're just hoping it can sustain, this against the market conditions. Like if BTC dumps, we want to see how well can this hold. Often this coin gets very good responses from dumps, in general at the moment. So we're just looking for this now to be flipped into a support. If BTC dumps, like don't rule out like a sweep lower, but does it then get bought back again? That would be an even more bullish sign, for
Yeah.
it. But for now, we have to be cautious. Why? Because look at what happened here, and look what happened here. Price could never actually sustain above it. It's now putting in its best chance here, I think. So we just go from there.
All right. Question: how do you pick up like the altcoins that you're gonna trade basically? Do you use spaghetti chart?
Yeah, I mean you can use spaghetti. You can like it's as simple as sometimes as just like looking at what if I want to scout, then it's as simple as looking at what's moving on the day on the right hand side. You can see what are the top performers. Obviously, when there's a big dump, then you want to look at spaghetti because you want to see what are the outliers. What coins are showing strength. Look at the chart. Are we going into key levels on them? If we are and we're showing strength, then obviously they're the coins that you may want to opt to trade. But in general, because I trade the 4 hour, I'll just have a scan through on the day. Look at what coins look good on the 4 hour. Obviously, we've seen GMT here put in a flip and then went.
Yeah.
Same, into the 50, just got stuck there. Just go and set my alerts maybe and see, what trades are shaping up on the 4 hour perspective for me to get involved in. Obviously, if a coin's setting up nicely, then I may look to scalp it on the lower time frame. Um, or I'm just looking for news for the most part. News trading is one of the better ways to trade because again, like you saw with the XRP thing, if you just long that tweet, it moves 80%, right, instant. You know,
True. So you look at narratives too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the narrative thing, quote unquote, is kind of played out now. Um, I think we were probably getting additional volume from everyone trying to become narrative traders, but I think the best way is probably still news trading.
So here you have you've identified that for GMT, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, just a question here. Um, like, how did you identify this range for GMT, for example?
I think you just
When
look
I
at
look at this chart, it looks a bit difficult for me.
yeah, it's not a great chart, but we can just look at it from this perspective. Again, it's not a great chart. We've got a level here, we've got a level here, and then we've got a block here. Resistance, consolidation. Like that's kind of the way I would look at it. Clearly, there's something here, and this isn't the greatest chart for it, but clearly when we look at one where it bounced here, had a bit of an odd block here, and then rejection here, consolidation here. Like there's clearly a level here, and then obviously once it finally broke, it's having a good day today. And you'd probably just want to see that continue through this, do that, and then continue along to these levels here. But again, this is a very choppy altcoin, so it doesn't give you the cleanest levels. But most alts will be a bit cleaner than this.
But this flip looks really bullish, you know.
It looks strong, but you can't enter here, right? You know, it's moved too much for me anyway. Like where if we're going to enter here, where's our invalidation?
Yeah, it's almost impossible to enter
Yeah.
here.
So I'm always happy to buy higher if it's clearer, or I'll wait for a pullback. Potentially, what it could do now is come to here, give us a similar scenario to Inge, where it sweeps, gives us
Retest.
doing, and then we get in and target up to here, up to this region. That's kind of what the type of plan I would set.
I've never seen you setting limits, by the way. Do you usually have
No.
alerts from levels
Yeah,
and wait for the action before
I
and
don't set
any set?
limits. I don't set limits. Simply, I can't like. I get it in like if you're setting like really really stinky ones, like market crash ones. Like I can see the them, but I like to be reactive to price action, and like I feel like especially if you trade in size, like setting limits like daily, it doesn't do nothing for me, because if it just nukes through my like. I don't like. We have levels of support, but a support doesn't necessarily mean it's going to hold. Like we could just nuke straight through it, and especially if you're trading size, like the last thing you want to do is just get caught up in something that just nuke through your buys. I'd rather just be ready to buy it at that time. That's just the way I personally trade. I'm reactive to price action. I don't want to buy something just because again it's going into here, because I don't know if it's just going to do this. Whereas if I like Inge, if it goes into it, gives me that bullish close, all right, I'm in. I have my validation. Let's go.
Yep. So it's always better to see the reaction before.
That's the way. That's my personal strategy that I'll trade. Obviously, everyone's different, but I don't know. Like when like intraday, if you're trading size, like setting limits doesn't really work too well.
True.
Anything else you want to go over?
Yeah, just a second. Let me just review my notes. I've had like a few questions. So yeah, personally, like whenever I need to identify what's the easy mode and what's difficult, I look basically like what is on the WWG. But for you, how do you understand what's easy mode? How you understand when you need to size down, when you have to size up, for example?
I mean, I think it comes with experience more than anything. There will be signs, but I feel like just having skin in the game for such a long amount of time and living through different cycles, like I lived through one cycle where I absolutely got wrecked, like bought loads of stuff, just held it to zero, didn't know what I was doing. Then went through the second cycle that we recently had. Used my experience to like essentially time the top, understand about euphoria, understand about environments, understand when I can see market participants going risk on, and then also just looking at structural when we look at the structures of the main coins, so BTC and Ethereum. Again, it comes down to risk reward in some cases, and also like let's look at this from a range perspective. Like obviously I can understand why people are bullish after the week we had and the news, but again for me I can't go risk on when we're putting in like a hammer weekly. Obviously we're still grinding into res. I would much rather chase what happens if we do break than try and time it, because if we do break this, we look at structure wise, like it's got a lot of room, so I can buy late and still get that those few days of of big upside that happen quickly, right? And I don't have a fear of buying higher or
Yeah.
selling lower. I just like to get in when makes most sense. And like the XRP thing, like I don't think you need to be a rocket scientist to realize that that was a bullish day, right? You could
Yeah.
essentially chase. Uh, Basically, you'd look at structures on that day, and you would just find something that was lagging, and it would catch up, and that's pretty much what happened throughout that day, right? We'd have the initial pops where everything popped, and then you'd have things move, and then you'd have other things follow. For example, XRP ripped, well, what follows XRP? XLM, and an XLM rips, right?
Yeah.
So scenarios like that you try and capitalize on can help.
Yeah, and I've seen you, for example, speaking about GMT and how usually Asia session bumps it. And you
Yeah,
know that by experience, right?
yeah, exactly that. Like it just again, I think the best way to get a feel of that kind of thing is experience. Just understanding the conditions you're in, remembering, like deja vu, emotions, like all different things. I mean, you can use market participants as well. Like you can usually get a strong feel of when people are like giga bearish and you're thinking, this ain't right, or everyone's giga bullish. You know for the most part, unless you're in like a massive bull run, most of them are wrong, and then you look at the you can look at scenarios like the May top where euphoria was so high, and then you just start seeing all these signs that actually it was the top, but you was just blind at the time. But then in the future you'll recognize them and probably act on it a lot better.
Yep. By the way, is it a range here from 110 till almost 2K? That's a huge range, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, debatable on where you'd put range low, but across here for sure is like a big macro level that we held, and then we look at essentially where we're at. 2K obviously is again a psychological level as well. It's a big whole number. They have relevance in markets. We can just use that as a range high, and then we'd use like this area here, given the price action we've seen as maybe a mid range across here. That for me is a valid range um, overall. And then you
I
could
have a
even add in
question.
the
What was your like biggest mistakes when you early started trading, and
um,
what made you like do better and understand the market better?
getting wrecked helped me do better. Essentially, I made all the dumb mistakes that probably most traders make. Bad risk management, just not having any sort of system in place was the big one. Like, I feel like after getting wrecked, I lost I lost like 24 ETH and 2.4 BTC at the time. So
Oh,
when I did that, it was like, and I remember I was like depressed for like a week, and I was like, well, I actually just sort of thought about it and said everything that happened was essentially my fault. Like there was no one else to blame. So from this point, I need to ensure that everything I do is to stop that happening again. Like basically, I was like, I never want to feel like that again, right? I never want to go through that experience. I never want to feel that feeling again. I realized everything I'd done was basically naivety to markets, and that um, I needed to basically build a set of rules to stop that happening, and that was a big thing for me. Like I spoke about this before, but I have the book still, but I don't need it anymore because I know it. But I literally had a book next to me that I writ these rules in, and I would not take a trade without it at all, and that was like a big thing. Um, so for me, I would say one, risk management, two, naivety of thinking that you could just go into this market and know what you're doing. Essentially just building a system was the most important thing. A set of rules to going into a trade that protected me from impulsive decisions, bad trades, like these type of things. Just that should be really basic, but they're not to most of us. Like when you enter the market. You take it for granted, and you find out, especially in crypto, very quickly. It doesn't take a lot to get wrecked. No matter how well you do, if you don't respect those things, eventually it'll catch you.
True. Do you
Uh,
still use the same risk management that like
um,
you've
yes and
before?
no. What you like,
Okay.
again, this comes from experience, but I think probably a good example is the XRP trade. I think from experience, if you've been in the market, that type of thing is a risk on scenario where you would risk more than your average trade, right?
Yeah.
That this is going to cause a mega squeeze. It's something that people have been waiting for a long time. You know what effect it has in the crypto market. So there's a lot of people that I know that earn 6, 7 figures very quickly on that because they've got experience in the market, and they were like, "Well, this is absolutely going to rip, right? We're dead certain." But they've also got systems in place where they're on it within seconds of the news coming out. These are, again, sort of talking about news trading as well. Like, these are scenarios where people might know to risk on versus your average trade. So the more you trade, the more you'll have your system. The more you'll know when. I guess I call it an A star setup. Right, when everything's aligning for you to go a bit more risk on.
For me, I just missed the whole XRP trade. To be
Yeah,
honest, I
that'll
didn't
happen though.
long.
Like,
Yeah.
that you're going to miss trades all the time, but this market doesn't stop. You have to, like, I never get that real FOMO of like, oh, I missed this, so let me go and do something stupid. Like, I don't get that because I've been in the market now for so long.
Done that before, and it just made me lose money. By the
Yeah,
way.
exactly. Like, FOMO isn't bad, but you have to just again have it with experience of knowing when the time is to pile in. And I don't get it in terms of like, oh, I need to, like, I've missed out. Let me go and again do something stupid. I don't need to because I've been in the market. I know how often there's opportunities. Like, yeah, like we might chop, but it's like you said. If I can avoid the chop and trade that 1, 2 days, I don't need to trade. Like, for me personally, after the XRP day, if I don't want to trade now for 2, 3 months, I don't have to. So I could just sit here and wait for a real big opportunity again, right?
I've seen you doing that, which is something very tough to do, right? Because you just feel you're addicted to it, and you just
Yeah,
need to trade all
of
the time.
course, and I am like that. I am like that as well. Like, I'm always watching the market, but what I'm very good at doing now, which I wasn't before, is trading on second accounts. So if I'm gonna sit in the market, what I do, I'll just put like 10K on an account, and then if I think it's bad, like conditions where I don't thrive in, I'm gonna trade that 10K, and then I'll just like, let's just say I earn $500. I'll remove that $500 and start with 10K again. And then if I lose $500, I'll just replace the 10K, and then I'll do that until I'm comfortable with doing my conditions where I'm going to size in again, or I'm confident. Um, so it's very good to differentiate like accounts like that. That's the big thing for me because I am addicted to the markets. I've got better with it, to be honest, especially over the last like year, like taking like breaks and stuff. Like, I've got much better at it, but I'm also, you know, I don't think it's a bad thing to be addicted to the market because it is kind of a necessity if you're going to do well out of it. But you just have to make sure it's not an unhealthy addiction where you start losing money and doing stupid things.
So, do you have a grading system for your trades? Like, do you grade your trades to understand when you size down and when you
Yeah,
size up?
I know off the bat, like, if I've got something where one technical analysis, um, then fundamental analysis, and then market conditions, and then maybe like market sentiment. Like, if all these things align, where I think, I'm like all these things align, then obviously I'm going to size up more, right? Then if I'm just taking an intraday trade in chop, okay, it's giving me a buy signal, but these conditions aren't great. Like, I'm not going to get conviction the same way as so there will always be multiple factors to tie into a trade. If I'm risk on, like, I'll need but then that can also come from how we spoke about in easy invalidation as well. Like if I've got an easy invalidation on a super bullish setup, I might want to risk more than
Yeah.
just a standard one, right? Like
True.
it comes down to trading the same system for so long that it becomes second nature to know what type, again, what setup is top tier and what isn't.
Yeah. Question about time frames. You usually use the 4 hour time frame mainly, right? But you still look at higher time frame to just understand the history of the maybe price action more, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
But for you to take the trade, it's mainly the 4 hour
yeah. I mean,
time
I,
frame.
I like pretty much, yeah. Like I'll trade like daily, 3 day as well. I find free like basically anything above 4 hour is how I would like to action. It's not specifically 4 hour, um, but anything higher time frame.
And you try to find like confluence between time frames.
Yeah, I mean, like you're always gonna have where you're going into like for example, like this is a big macro res essentially across the board here, and we're seeing now on the 3 day just continuation of not being able to break through. So it just depends on the setup. Like you know, you're always going to get some sort of a different confluence, and like you might even just get like, um, for example, here you see how like the 3 day
The
went
f-
into the oversold along here.
Yeah.
So even just buying that on the higher time frames can be profitable. If you get like a weekly bull div on not so much this, but on other coins like altcoins, you might find that they're more likely to pay out in time. Um, so it's just using different levels on a higher time frame basis to act on.
Okay. One more question. That's the last one.
Sure.
Uh, I've seen you that you flipped Bias the last day, I guess. You were all in, longing, buying spots.
Yeah.
And even when BTC was dropping, you had the spot buy at 30.6, I guess,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Then suddenly you've decided to book all your profits, get
Yeah.
out of all positions. Even you had CFX, which was almost at hitting the stop loss, right?
Yeah, I
But
took
you
like
kind of suppressed
a
everything.
5%. I mean, it was half, so I would have lost another half if I held. Like it was a 10% invalidation on the spot position. I'm happy to just take the 5%. It's interesting one. So it kind of goes in confluence with what we spoke about at the start, where we had all this news and then this price action here. This is not
Mm.
what I want to see, and I think the harsh part was is how big this rejection was. What I was looking to see is and bet on is the fact that um, we had all this news. If it's finally time to go, it's now. So I'm gonna and the luxury was that we got in really good positions where we had room to. It wasn't like we were just buying alts up here, right? It was
Sure.
we had the structure of the alts we were getting in down here and they'd moved up here and then just started to pull back like here. So that was the luxury we had where we wasn't just like buying tops and losing money. We were still earning money. But what I wanted to see from BTC, if given the news, was it just flushed a load of people and then bought back up before the breakout, right? That's if it, like it, for me, it was basically if we're gonna break now, given all the news, like it has to be now. Otherwise, like we said, and like happened, we got this nuke. So it's basically like a now or never scenario for me in terms of the breakout. And then I was just going from there. And then yeah, like because we didn't get that, I'm now. What reason do I have to keep betting on upside? What I'll just do now is say, well, we couldn't break it then. I'm so much better just being long if we flip this region, right? And yes, like I might miss out on some price action where BTC could chop here and then alts could rip, like that can happen, and I'll probably still catch stuff. Like I can intraday trade just fine, but in terms of like a risk on thing, it's now it's not worth it as such. Like the probability for me is that we would break down rather than break up after this move happened. For now.
Something interesting here, even like I guess 1 or 2 days before the XRP news, you and Eli started buying spots, which
Yeah,
was a bit weird, as if it is you're anticipating the news or what's gonna happen in the market, right?
yeah.
Uh, Very interesting. What was like?
All
What
right.
was the idea here, and
I
how
mean,
did you anticipate that?
I think it's just because of the structures of alts. Like, again, I remember how I said about the momentum of things changing. ARB is a
But we
good one.
stuck with the same uh, range for like 25 days, right? And
Yeah.
there was like nothing has changed, and suddenly you started
Yeah,
like
yeah,
buying
but
spots,
it does
dumping
change for
them.
alts. It does change for alts. Just because BTC, like I don't always just look at BTC to take a trade on alts. I don't really do that. Like if an alt's telling me a story, I'm not really going to care what BTC's saying. I don't trade BTC too much. Like I don't see the reward. Like you can get much higher beta out of altcoins. So ARB is an example, a very
Yeah,
clear example of structure wise. Obviously, we had it's a new listed coin, but we know that the $1 mark is a big level, right? Given a look at all this price action, we look at this as probably a deviation. Then we look at the RSI just consolidating at the 50, and price not doing much. So then for me, given the time frame that we're at, I'm now looking to essentially catch a swing on spot, you know, back towards these levels here at 1.4, which we're nearing. That it's as simple as that. That looking at the momentum again. Remember how I said to you, like you don't want to be short on price action that looks like this. Let me remove,
for ARB, it's just
like,
much more simple to
yeah,
catch the higher time frame move here,
yeah,
right? Just
yeah. This is a 3 day chart. I don't need to do anything. What would possess me to be short on this? Like you're betting on so much that it would just crash down. Like again, remember how I say if I'm shorting, I want a fast response. This structure
yeah,
doesn't tell me I'm going to get a fast response to the downside. Personally, it just says to me it's consolidating. It's got a nice structure, invalidation. Like essentially I'm breaking back down here on the 3 day, and then overall we've got a very big like potential range here on the 3 day. Like we'll use this as range lows and target upside.
amazing setup.
Yeah, and I can't remember all the trades we took. I've taken so many lately, but most of them perform very well. Simply just again just you have to use it as a bias check sometimes that if the market's not you know hard crashing and the shapes are starting to what happens is people just lose their money in this period here.
Yeah,
Chop, well, we're just looking to be on the outer of that and catch it just before it pops. And again, I think that does come from experience as well. Just realizing, hang on, we've been consolidating here, had that nice trap here. We've just been consolidating. The selling momentum doesn't look like it's going to kick in.
it's impossible to identify this on a lower time frame, by the
Oh,
way.
you can't. Yeah, you can't. You can't. And this is why I'm a high time frame trader personally. Like everyone's system works for them. Like whatever. It's just for me. I prefer as high as possible. And this is like when you say supply and demand. I don't see the relevance of using that personally on lower time frame, because when I'm looking at supply and demand, that's bigger moves. This is an example. I want to catch either side of this for if I'm looking at a supply and demand scenario. I'm
Yeah.
looking to play the bigger moves here. Like I want to get in down here and I want to sell up here. Um,
Oh, okay.
that's kind of just how I would see supply. Obviously, you can get it on a lower time frame perspective, but it's not as clear. I think um, what people define as supply and demand at the moment is debatable, because for me I prefer to play it on larger time frames where there's a lot more price action to work with on a deeper consolidation period on either side.
All right.
All right then.
Uh, Question about the bot. That's the last question, I promise.
Yeah.
How does the bot work? Like I've seen, like all the signals that you've basically been sharing on WWG and Twitter, all the signals have been
It's just built
successful.
on. It's built around helping me with my strategy. Essentially, that's the way we've tried to make it so. And not everything is a buy and sell signal. Like, I don't have any automation to just do it for me. It's very important that I have to check every alert if I'm going to take it, because again, price action is important. If the market structure and the price action doesn't suit the signal, then I don't take it.
What
So
does the bot take into consideration before sending the signal?
it tries to take in, like you got to remember it's a bot, so it can't do everything. But it's basically price action and momentum. Like, that's what it wants to see. But it's a bot, so it's very hard to get exactly right.
All right.
All right then.
Good. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. That was very helpful.
No problem. Take care.
Cheers, mate.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Cool. So if you watched that, you're still watching and you enjoyed. If you want to support this content, and also if you want to get some mentoring, like, I can't cater to everyone, but I am doing it in my Bybit referral group. So if you're trading actively on my ref link and you're looking for a one-to-one session, the links will be in the description. Sign up, deposit, trade. It's a way of supporting. You'll also get access to my trade bot and my indicator depending on your volume. That's just to stop people depositing $10 and then never contributing. Cool. Take care.